Hey everyone, in the overview of the collaborative path, I promised a clip on each step with more detail and some tips. So let's start with step 1, set the parameters. There's a strong evidentiary basis for doing this. Are you familiar with the Gottman Institute, Dr. John Gottman? He's a researcher, a psychologist down in New York, and he was studying the relationship of marriage in particular. And what he was doing was he set up a lab so that he could basically discover the secrets of a successful marriage. So the media called it the Love Lab. So what the Love Lab was a kitchenette and a sofa and a chair, coffee table. And the idea was couples would come in, and thousands of couples came and had conversations in the lab, and they did this over a period of 20 years plus. And so when they came in, Dr. Gottman had them metered. So he had sensors on them for breathing rate and heart rate and blood pressure and body temperature, and even sensors in the seating area. You know how when conversations get a little dicey, sometimes people will fidget in that? So he even had them under the cheeks to know how often they were fidgeting and at what points they were fidgeting in the conversations. And then in addition to that, he had a team of psychologists observing them and videotaping them behind one-way glass. So lots of data, pretty cool research lab. When the couples come in, they talked about everything. So they talked about the in-laws and the outlaws, and they talked about the kids and the stepkids. They talked about finances and sex life and infidelity and everything under the sun. When they were having these conversations, Dr. Gottman's team noticed a pattern. And from that pattern, they were able to predict, regardless of the subject matter, whether the conversation was going to end well or not, based upon what happened in the first 3 minutes. The conversations that ended well were the ones where they took the time to talk about how they were going to talk about the situation before they get into it. Effectively, they set the parameters. So that's the evidence to support step 1. And you're probably saying, hey, Elward, I didn't need the evidence. I've heard and seen lots of situations where people say, every time I started to talk about it, things got really heated. No matter what I say, they get really defensive. They take everything I say as a criticism. Doesn't make any difference. And then the one about the meetings. How'd the meeting go? Meeting never went anywhere. It went off the rails before we even get started. So whether you're going by the evidence or whether you're going by the experience, it's important to set the parameters. So that's enough about the why you need to do it. How do you do it? Well, when I'm facilitating a group, or I'm chairing a meeting, or I'm mediating a collaborative conversation among a couple of people, I start by saying to them, let's take a few minutes before we begin to talk about how we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. And how I do it then is I'll write out for them a sentence that says, what I need in order to have a safe and effective conversation today, or a safe and effective meeting, or an effective meeting today is, and I ask them to complete it. And then I wait, and there's a little bit of silence, a few seconds, maybe 30 in a group, and then the ideas start to come out about how they want to have the conversation, what they expect of each other. And that's how it gets started. So let's say though it's just you and another individual, you don't have a mediator, you're not in a meeting, there's just the two of you. How do you do it? It works just as well if at the start of the conversation you say, you know, before we get into this, we both know we have strong views on this topic, so what if we take a few minutes and talk about how we're going to have our conversation before we do that? Now they might say, what do you have in mind? To be ready for that, have a couple of easy ones ready. Something like, I thought we might agree at the start that we're not going to interrupt each other. Or what if we each take, say, 5 minutes to talk in turn first, and then we go from there? I'm going to focus on trying just to listen without thinking about what I'm going to say. Those can be whatever you like them to be. Just have a couple ready. So then when the ideas come out, then what do? Well, write them down, summarize them after you've both generated or both contributed to the list, and then commit to them. Say something like, I'm good with the things that we've talked about so far. How about you? And there you have it. You've set the parameters for the conversation, and now you're ready for step 2, the exchange of perspectives. Stay tuned for the next clip.